reunion in Salisbury, Tennessee.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
She had 6 brothers that served in World War II at the same time.
Really?
One of the cousins, a banker, had come across the newspaper clipping, I don't know where, I guess in an archive, laminated it and sent it out, and the paper had done a story about the 6 Weatherly brothers who were all serving.
How many are still alive?
They're all passed.
Are they?
Yeah.
You know, I had a uncle on my dad's side killed in World War II. I had an uncle on my mom's side killed in World War II. So one in the Navy and one in the Air Force. So, you know, I was watching one of those. I got home the other day late, and they have the whole day of these memorial flicks or something. And there was one of these old movies on one of the channels, and I got to watching it. I'd done some research on a couple of my uncles, the ones that died, and one of them had been involved. My uncle Eddie had been involved in one of the missions that went deepest into Europe ever to blow up oil refineries. Well, I was sitting there watching this movie, and that's what it was about. The eighth infantry or whatever, and they were going into the deepest part of. But anyway, there's a place there where my uncle was. His plane had crashed, and the German villagers had pulled him out of the plane and had buried him in a little spot there. And anyway, I've got a cousin that went there last year. It was her dad that died. She was pregnant when he was. Her mom was pregnant rather, and she was born, and she had never seen her dad. Anyway, she went to the site where he had been buried. He's now in the National Museum, but.
Well, there are a lot of those transitions taking place right now. I was telling John just a moment ago that there was a Republican congressional primary in Texas this past week, where the incumbent lost, and that means that come this November, there will be no members of the United States Congress who had served in World War II. That generation is passing. The other thing I saw this week is the oldest person in America now is 115 years old. Was born in 1899.
Yeah.
There will not be anybody born before 1900 within a year or two. Mm-hmm. So it transitions.
Yep. That was a good era, really, after the war, especially the building of America when they came back from war. That was pretty amazing, really, I thought. Yes. Anyway, it was a good time to remember our veterans. And
you know, Memorial Day up here at the courthouse, I think when they asked if there were World War II veterans out there, I think there were only probably less than 5 hands that went up. And that generation did sacrifice, and they didn't sacrifice just for their country. They sacrificed really for humanity, for the whole world.
Yeah.
It's been almost 70 years now since the end of World War II. Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of these, a lot of the kids and so forth coming up now just doesn't understand what it is to be an American. You know, and pushing these fights. I remember, of course, I was drafted during the Vietnam conflict, so you know it's amazing really when you get called to duty and you know, your life changes. You go off and serve your country. And it worries me how things would take place today if something happened and we really needed our young people to step forward.
Well, we talked about this a few weeks ago. I really think that there's a lot to be said for compulsory national service, including military service.
Mm-hmm. We'd have a drone war for sure. Everybody be out there with the remote controls flying these drones.
Well, I think it's much less likely that we would be in conflicts for, 13 years.
Well, I think it's...
If we all were at risk.
I don't disagree, but I also think that from a Republican standpoint, I'd be happy because I think it would make a lot of these people much more grounded, much more realistic, and more conservative.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Governor Haslam just signed into law the other day. I was reading in the paper, they're raising so much cane about these drugs given to put people to death. Now Governor Haslam has signed in a new law stating that we have the option to use the electric chair again.
And why did we move off the electric chair to the drugs?
Because it was too harsh.
Because the same people that are fussing about the drugs said that the electric chair was too harsh.
But now there seems to be a problem with the drugs. They can't get the drugs just right.
Well, it's because the companies, the opponents of capital punishment have been willing to do anything they can do to stop it. And so they've sued the companies, they've threatened to sue the companies, they've threatened to sue the states, and the companies just looked at it and said, you know what, this is not something we make a profit on. We just did it because society needed it, and we're not going to take this risk anymore. So they've quit making the drugs.
Well, actually, they continue to make the drugs.
Some
Those
companies
drugs continue to be available for medical purposes. The companies have made business decisions to not sell them.
Liability
in many cases.
decisions.
Have you?
Well, it's less liability and more public pressure. I mean, that's.
Have you ever seen them put a dog down or an animal?
Yes.
It's pretty amazing. It's almost instant when they give them a shot.
Well, I can't
they
understand.
They just go to sleep, you know.
It was news to me a week or so ago. I read Texas uses one drug. And I know the fuss has been on the 3 drug mixes.
Yeah, right.
I guess the only thing I'm confused about is why the opponents of capital punishment haven't attacked Texas for only using the 1 drug. And if the 1 drug works, then why are these other states worried about 3 drugs?
It's pretty amazing to me how this thing just keeps rocking and roaring. But
well, you have you have people who are very well-meaning on both sides. There's an article in the paper this morning about some protests in Nashville yesterday, but they're being led by, in many cases, ministers, other people who have very deep-seated views about this issue. We don't have to agree with them, but that's not the same thing as disrespecting how sincere they are about the beliefs that they hold.
It's not a disrespect for their beliefs, but the point is, on so many issues, for example, the United Methodist Church, for over, I guess, since 1972, 30 to 40 years, every 4 years, the conference has voted to reaffirm the belief that homosexuality is inconsistent with Christian teachings. And every 4 years, the same demonstrators, many of whom are not even United Methodists, show up at our conference and parade around, disrupt the ongoings, and demand to get their way. So I'm not opposed to them having their belief. I'm not opposed to them talking about their beliefs. But basically, we're going to disrupt you. We're going to cram this down your throat until we, the minority, get our way. I do have a problem with that.
Well, it's the world's changing, John. We have to get used to it, I guess. These demonstrators are starting to make a difference.
Well, it is true that in nationwide polls over the last 15 years, although a majority of Americans still supports the capital punishment, the size of that majority has fallen rather substantially over that period of time. Now, you could have different opinions about why that is, but that's a fact. It's a continuing debate. The fact is, we're in a group of countries who do this that ordinarily we don't like comparing ourselves to. The groups that do capital punishment on a significant scale anyway, we're talking about China and Iran and Pakistan and places like that typically.
But they
Some
also
people don't think
have our court system that we have.
Yeah, they typically get theirs done within a year.
A lot of those are theocracies. There's no rights for the accused. That is a completely apples and orange comparison.
No, but most of our allies who do have established judicial systems for that have moved away from the death penalty. It's just a different societal view. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind about it, but that's the genesis of the discussion.
But my point is, when groups make those comparisons to China and Iran, they're doing it for a purpose.
Okay,
and it's not a fair comparison.
Then compare us to Great Britain and France and
That's
Germany
fine.
and those who don't have the death penalty and who do have those established
systems. They also
systems.
don't have the violent crime rates actually, I take that back. They don't have the gun crime rates that we have, but they actually have higher violent crime rates. Most of them have actually seen spikes the last 20 years.
I noticed that now in the paper today, the Blunt school system is going to be suing over the taxes again. What is going on that all these school systems are now suing over the liquor tax? Liquor taxes. It's something that's going on in how many counties now? 8 or 10 or something?
Look, bureaucracy becomes an entity of itself that will fight to survive. And all this is a fight for more food. Money is their food.
Yeah, I understand that. But how in the world is it upside down like this where it's so misunderstood? I mean, how in the world, what's causing this?
There's just this issue has been brought to people's attention that nobody realized was there. Interestingly enough,
explain the issue.
Somebody saw some money they could grab.
There are 2 state statutes involved in it. One of it implies that there's not a sharing of this revenue from the cities out to the counties if the city operates its own school system. There's another statute which implies that it's absolute, that you have to share the revenue. Well, the city, and frankly every other city in Tennessee, had been following the one that said you didn't have to.
You mean the one that benefited them?
Well, if you operated the school system. Okay?
Well, if you operate a school system and didn't have a shared system, that's
right.
Pretty easy to understand, isn't it?
Well, but there's another statute. that implies otherwise. And somebody, maybe smartly, I don't know, saw this and realized that there's a potential problem here and brought this out publicly. And then they brought it.
Well, no, wait a minute. They didn't bring it out publicly like that. What happened was a county saw that they could get some of the money that the city had been spending and sued for it. Well, and now you've got conflicting statutes that'll have to be resolved.
Well, you had the 2 technical advisory services that are operated by the University of Tennessee. There's the County Technical Advisory Service and the Municipal Technical Advisory Service, who have different opinions about.
Because they represent their individual bureaucratic bodies.
And so that's what we're talking about here.
Folks, this is why the less government you can have, the better. They're fighting over the money, irregardless of the fact that it's all the taxpayers' money.
But
it's all our money.
I would contend what they're fighting over is the by golly important thing of saying that they never ever raise taxes. That's what they really are fighting about.
Well, if they just learn to prioritize and spend money wisely.
Well, if that's true, John, what you're saying is that every school system in Tennessee is operated poorly.
Yes, I am.
Okay, well,
Washington, D.C. spends over $20,000 per student on their education, and they are the worst, lowest performing school system in the country. Our problem is we have a bunch of bureaucrats that don't want to actually talk about real solutions to our problems. Do we have problems in education? Absolutely. Are teachers supported the way they should be supported? Absolutely not. But it's not a money issue, it's a management and it's a priorities issue. And the bureaucrats don't want to discuss that because they might have to actually make some hard decisions.
Well,
so it's easier just to say we need more money.
You'd also have to model a lot of northeastern liberal school systems that you despise because their students perform at higher rates.
Actually, if you want to model someone, I'd model the Catholic school system that operates at a much lower per pupil expenditure and achieves higher results. Matter of fact, Mayor Giuliani tried to do that when he was mayor of New York City, and guess what? The ACLU sued him because he was going to contract with the Catholic school system's curriculum director to help work on the curriculum of the New York public schools. They sued and said separation of church and state, even though there were no religious issues going to be brought to bear. Giuliani just looked and said, gosh, Catholic school system spends $2,500 a student and their kids outperform ours. Why wouldn't we ask them how they do that? But the ACLU didn't want that.
What about homeschooling?
Well, the reason there's such a fight over homeschoolers being able to play sports, and I know people get all bent and they'll go off on these tangents and go, well, those people don't want to participate, so they shouldn't be allowed to. Well, guess what? Those people pay the same taxes that support that school. They're not actually, you ought to be happy about them, because if they play sports, that would be the only part of their taxes that they would be utilizing. The bulk of their money goes to educate other people. But the reason the school boards fight that so strongly is because that's one of the major reasons that more people don't homeschool. If homeschoolers are allowed to play athletic sports, you will see a huge spike in the number of people pulling their kids out of public schools and homeschooling them.
Well, be that as it may, the rankings for performance in schools around the country, the top 10 for the previous year. Number 1 was Maine. Number 2 was California. Number 3 was Connecticut. 4 was Massachusetts. 5 was Maryland. 6 was New Hampshire. Virginia came in at 7th. 8th was Ohio. 9th was Texas. 10th, Colorado. Tennessee comes all the way down at, let's see. No, we did better on this one. We came in 41st.
Who does the rankings?
This is U.S. News and World Reports.
But what's it based on?
It's based upon test scores primarily.
And who does the testing?
The states.
The same bureaucracies.
Well, so you're saying their bureaucracies are better at testing than ours?
It's just like the president with this leak exposing the CIA team leader in Afghanistan. The White House is going to investigate itself. Look, this is a self-perpetuating system. Our kids are not competitive against the Chinese and against the Indian kids. They're not, because we're focused. Let me give you an example, Franklin. In junior high, I don't need you to teach my child how to make an omelet. The mother or the father can teach a child how to make an omelet. Teach them math, science, history, and English.
Well, John, all I can say is it was clearly, without question, beyond any debate, the Republican Party that was the sole proponent for years and years and years of the importance of standardized testing for our schools so we could evaluate how our students were doing compared to other places.
We were proponents of evaluations.
Now you say that those evaluations
first off, the evaluations
helpful.
for Common Core were put together by the same Northeastern liberals and European UN people that put all of that together.
And the American Federation of Teachers and the National Association of Public
all
Schools
of whom are involved.
Principals.
Franklin, the
the
Common Core, there was only
states.
one mathematician on the Common Core curriculum committee. He was, I think, a Princeton or an MIT mathematician. He refused to sign off on the math portion of the Common Core curriculum. He said it was horrible. The only mathematician on the whole committee wouldn't agree to it.
The American Chamber of Commerce, the United States Governors Association,
Franklin,
the American Federation of Teachers.
We're not competitive in the world.
Approved these standards as the way to go.
We are not competitive in the world. And the problem, some of it's cultural, but the real problem, well, for example, locally, I asked the local school system about giving 1, 2s, and 3s instead of A, B, C, and D. And I was told that they just didn't feel like competition at that age was really helpful. Well, I'm sorry. I think the Chinese and the Indian kids probably think competition is the way the world works. And I was told at one point that, well, an F is just so emotionally devastating for a child. Well, when you get out of school, an F is called you're fired.
Why don't we have valedictorians at Cleveland High School anymore?
Because that only helps the one child who wins the valedictorian. And because they claim that they can't actually figure out who there's so many that have a 4.0 average. Now, schools all over the country, for the history of education, have been able to figure out who the valedictorian is. But apparently, the Cleveland City schools can't figure that out anymore.
You know, when I went to the Cleveland City schools, they had valedictorians. And a lot of the people I graduated with, when I say something to them about this, they're shocked. They didn't know that it had ever been done away with. It's amazing.
Oh, I know. Well, here's the real problem. There's a couple of problems. One, the one child who does get valedictorian, guess what? You have now excluded him from numerous scholarships that he could have applied for. Because if you're not designated the valedictorian, you can't apply for the valedictorian scholarships that colleges give. And two, think about the concept. That's what I was told. it only helps the one child who wins. What about the 200 children who started freshman class with the one valedictorian who tried to be valedictorian? Now, you're right, they didn't end up winning, but how much higher were their grades? How much better was their achievement simply because they were striving to be the best? We are becoming a mediocre society.
I agree about the valedictorian.
All right. Let's have, hey. All right. We've all agreed to it. That's good. Now then, let's send our message to Cleveland High School.
Let's have a valedictorian again.
Let's have a valedictorian again. Why not? Bradley, do they have one?
Yes.
Oh, Bradley has one, but Cleveland can have one. Okay. Anyway, there's a lot of valedictorians still alive. Should we bring some back and protest? Should we go out in front of the city school meetings and have the valedictorians protest? We want valedictorians back. Oh, anyway, that's another story. Mr. Obama did his political things this week, and I will say he did do a surprise visit to Afghanistan. I was happy that our troops were visited, but I was reading an article about it, and then it goes on to say that they invited the presidents over there, or the presidents to be, to visit with Mr. Obama, and they declined. So, what do you think it was? Was it a political move, or was it truly a military move?
Oh, the purpose of that trip was not to meet with those folks yet. That guy's not even been sworn in yet. So that will happen down the road. It sounds to me like there's actually a move underfoot to work out the status of forces agreement with the incoming president that we've not been able to get with Karzai. That candidate made a number of comments during his campaign that he was in favor of working out that arrangement.
Well, there's a battle right now between the CIA and between the political people and the military and CIA people over what troop levels will be. It looks like the CIA has at least temporarily won a little bit because they wanted at least 10,000 people left in country. Now, they'll be right at 10,000 the next year, but then it's going to drop to about 5, and then it's going to go away. Mm-hmm. They're concerned that is too low of a level, and it will allow the Taliban to get a foothold.
Well, those are all valid concerns. I think, like Vietnam, there is a difficulty when you're trying. Hold on.
I know, but
when you're
don't
trying
use that
to
analogy. We
there
didn't
is
win in Vietnam.
There is an analogy there. The analogy.
Use the analogy to South Korea or to Germany after World War II. That's the analogy.
No, there's not. It's not. The analogy is that you can't stay longer than the people who live there. And if the people who live there don't want you there, ultimately they're going to prevail.
How long did we stay in Germany before they even had a free election?
Many of them wanted us there, though.
8 years.
Yeah.
How long did Great Britain occupy India?
Oh, 100 years.
No, they occupied them about 30 years. And you know what you got for 30 years of occupation? You got the largest, most stable democracy in the world.
Let's take a break.
You're listening to BackFire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
You need money overnight? Check into cash. Your time is tight. .com. Bank account's too low? Check into cash. So where do you go? .com. Do it online in a record time. It's the easy way to get money next day. Do a quick click from home at checkintocash.com. Just stay in the house, check into cash, and grab your mouse.com. Get your money online, check into cash, right on time.com. You can be sure it's secure from our bank straight to yours. Do it quick click from home at checkintocash.com. No time to get away. Check into cash. You gotta stay home.com. Hey, that's okay. Check into cash. You can do it alone.com. Any old time, do it online. Just stay in the house and grab your mouse. Do a quick click from home. Get your money overnight at the right website. Do a quick click from home. Go to checkintocash.com.
Did you know that U.S. Money Shops cashes all checks, even the ones most check cashers reject? Tax refund checks, government checks, payroll checks, and many more. And when you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off your next purchase. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail. So stop by one of our 11 locations or visit us online at usmoneyshops.com.
Buy or sell or apply today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some restrictions may apply. See store for details.
Wheeler Technologies has moved. Visit them at their new location at 490 Grove Avenue Southwest next to Bradley Rentals. Same great folks, same great service with a better location to serve you. Call Wheeler Technologies for voice, data, and security needs at 664-TECH. That's 664-8324. And remember, depend on Wheeler Technologies for the current time and temperature every day at 476-1111. Tennessee Alarm Contractor C1750.
Hello, my name is Andy Figelstaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
Rebel Drive-In Family Restaurant, the restaurant you grew up with here in Cleveland, Tennessee, located at 1010 South Lee Highway. Give them a call at 476-6373. They have a wonderful, huge breakfast, lunch, and dinner menu. It's the home of the famous Lotta Burger, and now a whole lot more. It's open every day except Monday. Yes, now even open on Sunday. Same menu, but new low prices. And don't forget, seniors, a discount on every Wednesday. Check out the home of the famous Lotta Burger and a whole lot more now at the Rebel Drive-In, 476-6373. Check out rebeldrivein.com. The Rebel Drive-In. Calvin's Flea Market. It's the grand opening bash. That's right, Saturday, May the 31st from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's the grand opening bash at Calvin's Flea Market here in Cleveland at 2355 South Lee Highway, just across the street from the Cleveland Speedway. You can call them at 284-7120. That's 284-7120. The grand opening bash will have the Whoop live remote. Pro Daddy and Matador, check us out. Hourly giveaways, live music, and much more. It's the indoor-outdoor, rain or shine, that's everything under the sun, or in the rain flea market, including Big Daddy's Dogs, just in case you're hungry, with over 20 current vendors, and there's room for more. If you'd like to get a booth and be a vendor, call now if you're interested. There's new items, wholesale to the public, including all kinds of used and gently owned items. Calvin's Flea Market, here in Cleveland at 2355 South Lee Highway. Don't miss the grand opening bash, the Whoop live remote with Fro Daddy and Matador, hourly giveaways, live music, and much more. Saturday, May 31st, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
If you're looking for a home, apartment, or office space, Jones Properties provides residential and commercial properties in the heart of the Southeast that will fulfill any need. Plus, Jones Properties is one of the fastest growing firms in the area, which offers you more security. When you're ready for a home, apartment, or in need for commercial office space, it makes sense to call Jones Properties first at 472-4000. Plus, you can get additional information by logging on to the website at www.jonesproperties.biz. Jones Properties is also looking to invest in properties. So if you have a property that you need to sell, call the professional team at Jones Properties first. They'll help you find the perfect property for whatever your needs. Call today, 472-4000. And don't forget to keep up with Jones Properties on Facebook.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, welcome back to the show this morning, folks. I've got something I want to play for you. You might want to put your headsets on, guys, and we'll talk about it from there.
What happens with Obamacare? We, the American people, have with that program shifted the power that was given to us by the Constitution and by the founders to the government. It's the most massive shift of power in America that has ever occurred. That's why we need to redo it. We need to put the power back in the hands of the people, and we need to make sure we keep it there.
That's Dr. Ben Carson. He's talking about Obamacare. I don't know if that was the part I was wanting to put on, but anyway, he was talking about, I want to go back. He was talking about the Veterans Affairs scandal. He thinks it's a gift from God. He thinks that this will hopefully wake up America and let them realize
what single-payer government health care would be like.
That's right. And this Dr. Ben Carson, I'll tell you something. He's something else to listen to. I listened to yesterday. He spoke at a prayer breakfast or something that Mr. Obama was at, and Mr. Obama had to listen to a lot of things that I could tell you that he didn't want to sit there and listen to. So
I tell you, one of the interesting, about 2 weeks ago, he was on The View, and what was funny is Whoopi Goldberg and I think the media sort of spun this a little bit. They acted like there was this huge dust up. It didn't look that particularly heated to me, but Whoopi did take sort of a different tact with him. But when you really listen to what she was saying, she really was validating what he had said. They basically were saying the same things, that the welfare system discourages people from getting up and out of welfare. I'm not sure. I think she just instinctively wanted to be against him, but she actually was more or less agreeing with him.
You know, I heard his story. He was talking about, I think he was from a family of 20-something kids.
Well, it really is interesting. His mother made him write a book report every week. And he said, so every week was in a lot of trouble, and she got him, I think, in a different school, made him do the book report. He started getting better grades, but every week she would sit down and she would look at his book report. He said he found out later she had a third-grade education and couldn't read. She couldn't read the book reports, but the point was she was demanding excellence out of him.
Yeah, he said that she turned off the TVs and said that they were going to spend that time reading. And she made them go to the library and read, and then she did a weekly book report. And he said that she'd get the book report, and he said that she'd circle it and make check marks on it and everything. Said he didn't realize it, but she was just making marks on the paper. She couldn't actually read it.
Well, the interesting thing, too, is the school experts that Franklin talks about at times had told him that he was incapable of accomplishing anything, that he couldn't learn. They had already labeled him as basically defective. Mm-hmm. And he's now been one of the world's leading pediatric neurosurgeons.
He really makes a lot of sense when you hear him talk.
Well, I would like to ask Franklin a question.
Okay.
All of the good liberals that, let's say Dr. Ben
Unlike
Carson.
the bad liberals, is that what you meant?
Well, that's a hard subset to separate. Dr. Ben Carson is being pushed to run for president. All of the Democrats, let's say, that choose not to vote for Dr. Ben Carson, would you agree that they, in fact, are all racists?
No, John, I wouldn't.
Well, apparently, if I criticize the president, I'm a racist. But if a Democrat criticizes Dr. Ben Carson, you're saying they won't be racists?
No, I wouldn't say any of those things.
Because when the Democrats in Pennsylvania refused to elect Lynn Swann as their Republican senator, I assume since they didn't vote for the black candidate, they were all racist, because that's how the Democrats treat Republicans. Doesn't it work in the reverse?
No, John, if what you do as a bedrock for your criticisms of the president is embrace one goofy, nutty theory after another, one has to wonder if you have a serious disagreement with the president or if there's some other motivation.
You mean a goofy, nutty idea?
Like he was born in Kenya.
A goofy,
like
nutty.
That. Remember that one?
No, Franklin, I didn't embrace that, but a goofy, nutty.
That he's a Muslim. Remember that
I think
one?
he has Muslim
Still think he
sensitivities.
is.
Okay, well, that's my point. You guys latch
don't
on
think
to
he
these
is?
goofy.
Well, Franklin,
Do
let
you
me
not-
hit-
do you
I'm
not
glad
think-
you-
No, I don't. I think
Muslim beliefs?
when the man looks me in the eye and says I'm a Christian, I ought to believe him.
You mean
Just
when he
like I
looked
would
veterans
believe-
in the
just
eye
like
and
I would
said, "I
believe
will
you."
take care of you" in 2007, and then in 2008, and then in 2010, and now we've allowed them to languish and die on waiting lists? You mean like when he looked them in the eye?
Except that as we get into this investigation,
You mean the
still nobody's
investigation
been
that-
able to show this has happened yet.
Oh my gosh! Oh, you mean they haven't actually
I'm not
proved
saying
that
you're
the
wrong.
death was directly related to not getting
No,
care?
there's a wonderful.
So it's
article-
okay if you don't get care as long as
there's a
you can't
wonderful
prove
ar-
you
There's
died.
a wonderful article out about this that's come out in the last 24 hours. That in fact they were having congressional hearings on this issue after Obama was sworn in. This practice had been going on for a long time in the VA. It's not a new phenomenon.
By the way,
now, that doesn't make it right.
You're right.
I'm not suggesting that.
But since you brought that up, he actually was on the committee, Franklin. He attended only 19 out of 37 hearings when he was in the Senate on this. But yet he now says that he just heard about this. So in the 19 meetings that he did
I'm perfectly
attend,
happy for you to look at the president's performance with the VA overall. I'm not happy
He's
with
not
you cherry picking.
I'm not saying that he caused the VA
No,
problem.
I'm not saying that
There
either.
is no way
No,
that
look,
he's
he's
the VA
in
is
charge
a
of
messed up system. It needs to be fixed.
Agreed.
You know,
But
why
Franklin,
hasn't
when they come
anything been
forward-
done?
Well, some things have
Do
been
you
done.
think the guy in charge of the VA, now he's a retired general, he was wounded in war, he's a great person, should he be running the VA?
I don't know.
he's been there 5 years, Franklin.
Well, guess what else he's done while he's been there, though?
Tell
so
me.
this is a balancing act?
No, they recognized for the first time that Agent Orange was a serious health issue, and those veterans aren't having to fight over those benefits anymore. They recognize
Franklin,
post-traumatic
when
stress
you say-
disorder in a way
Franklin.
they hadn't before. So what you've got is a huge influx of veterans into the system, and that has
Actually, their budget is more than tripled.
yes, because this president has devoted more resources
Franklin,
to
their
it.
budget is tripled, but the waiting list has quadrupled. I mean, Franklin,
the number of people being served by it has also gone
right
up
now, the White
dramatically,
House
too.
is saying their standard scandal routine is we can't comment because there's an IG investigation. Guess what? That'll be the fourth IG investigation in his term, in Obama's term. He's had, in 2010, he got a report sent to the White House saying there were secret waiting lists in 2010, and yet he had the gall to come out and say, I just heard about this on the news the other day. And on top of that, Franklin, this weekend, they have now allowed vets to go to private care if they're on the waiting list.
Okay.
Guess what? They've had the ability to do that for decades. They did that in World War II. There's actually a line item for that. Why wasn't that done a month ago when the president first heard about this on CBS News?
The fact is,
Why didn't he do it
the
immediately?
fact is,
Franklin, why didn't
the
he do that
fact
immediately?
is, John, I know these are uncomfortable
this
for
is
you.
a fact.
But the
Answer
fact
that
is,
question. Why didn't
Wait a
he
minute.
do
Let's
that
hear the fact.
immediately?
Wait a minute. I want to hear the fact.
that
What's the fact?
overwhelmingly, vets, when surveyed about their feelings
So
about
you're not
the
going to
VA,
direct. You're not going
give
to answer.
positive comments
Franklin,
about it.
you're not. Well, first off, that's like the 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Crest. Guess what?
No,
it was 100 dentists
it's
who were requesting
it's the-
samples of Crest
it's the
to
same,
give away.
It's the same rate as
Franklin,
people
it's
comment
a
on private
statistic,
hospitals.
but it has nothing to do with the fact that he didn't fix this. He could have 4 weeks ago, when he first heard about this, directed them to allow him to go to private care. It took a month for them to do that. That is. Let me give it this way. The Los Angeles Times and the Boston Globe this week, liberal newspapers, said this is complete incompetent administration. That was the liberal Boston Globe and Los Angeles
the
Times.
Inspector General is not controlled by the White House, number one. That's who's conducting the initial investigation in this.
No, that's not what I said. Earlier, what I said was the White House is investigating
No,
itself.
When you have,
because
when you have
you're-
doctors
you-
coming to the front, you've got 20-something different facilities.
20, there's more than that.
No,
No,
you've
in
got
trouble.
employees from these units saying this has happened. You've got doctors that are saying this happened.
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take to investigate it?
Well, there's not just one facility involved.
There's
more than
20-something.
that. No, there's more than 20 facilities. There's
It's
200 and
26
something.
facilities.
No, there's 20-something
No, it's
facilities that are already
26
Where there have been
20
allegations of this
26
been
that
done.
already
In
said
16
they've got
states.
employees saying, yes, it happens here. Doctors, Everybody's saying, yes, this happened.
But
what
just so you
why don't we just call them into one big room and ask them what happened?
Now, wait a minute.
Would that be a good investigation?
Steve, let me give
If
a
you
little
think they'll tell
balance,
the truth.
though. The Obama administration is doing some things. For example, they've paid $573,000 in bonuses to the VA while they had this record backlog. They've paid $10,000 bonus to the regulations director after Legionnaire's disease broke out in the facility. They paid $63,000 bonus to a Pittsburgh VA director after 5 veterans died of Legionnaire's disease. They paid $25,000 in bonuses to a St. Louis facility director during their 4-year tenure there, while 1,800 veterans were exposed to HIV and hepatitis because of unsanitary dental equipment. So while the veterans have been suffering, this administration has been paying bonuses to the very people misabusing the veterans.
Well, while this president was there, the head of the St. Louis VA was also fired by this administration.
A year ago, Congressman Jeff Miller, Republican Florida, sent a letter to the White House, and he detailed the waiting list. He asked them to reassign or to fire the people in charge. He has never received a response from the White House.
What about the Obama administration talking about how someone had just been let go? And it comes out he was the head of the VA.
He announced his retirement last October.
Yeah, and he's basically retired. I mean,
and they tried to claim that was them taking action. And by the way, Frank,
that's
when you
really
talk
bad.
about, when you throw the Muslim thing up, the detainees in Guantanamo have not only their own Quran provided to them by the U.S. government, but a hammock to put the Quran in so it will never touch the ground, while at the same time, our own military chaplains have been told they're not allowed to have a Bible out on their desk because it might be offensive. So our own military chaplains are told to keep their Bibles in a desk drawer while the Taliban is actually being given.
I'm gonna
Google it.
demand
Go
to
for
see
it.
the proof
Go
of
for
that
it.
statement.
While the and by the way, do you know what the ratio in Guantanamo is for prisoners versus doctors? 1.5. So for every 1.5 people in Guantanamo, there's a doctor, while our VA vets are sitting on waiting lists and dying, waiting to get to be seen.
well, Mr. Obama, I know the headlines again. VA scandal is disgraceful, but says 40 vets might not have died from wait times.
Of course not. Can you prove it? That's the lawyer in him. Can you prove it?
That's not what he said. He said that they would get back to us quickly on this, and they expected
After
a preliminary report this
after
week.
The fourth it's the fourth report, Franklin.
Would it be
How
quicker?
many do you have to have?
Is it going to be any quicker than the Benghazi investigation?
Well, the Benghazi investigation's been the most investigated thing in the history of
It's
American
because
government.
This administration won't turn any paperwork over. By the way, we now have emails showing a direct link between the Washington office of the IRS and the abuse of conservative Tea Party groups. So when he said, oh, it's some rogue guys down in Cincinnati, we now have direct proof. And that only came because the White House was forced to turn over documents that they had refused to turn over.
All right, we've been missing some calls. Let's take a call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Double, I have a question.
Go ahead.
About this Agent Orange. How many years has it been since they're supposed to have done that?
It's been 40 to 50 years.
Okay, if you was there 40 or 50 years ago and you're still real healthy, can you still get it?
What they have determined is that there are certain medical conditions that have been associated with exposure to Agent Orange. And if you have those types of problems, then there's a presumption that you can...
during Vietnam. Agent
Yeah.
Orange was during Vietnam where
Yeah.
they used some chemicals. Basically, they used acid or something.
Well, it was a
It's a defoliant, a weed killer, basically.
Yeah, a weed killer.
But they
okay.
sprayed it, and
On
and
the
the
troops
men
in
were
many cases.
under it when
Yeah,
they sprayed.
many cases.
But this is what I'm saying. Somebody that's real healthy right now that was there, and they can still pay for it.
No, it's treatment that they've authorized.
What happened is for 35 years, individuals had these conditions and could not get treatment from the VA for them. They were turned away.
I know somebody that's trying to get on it. There's nothing wrong with him, and he wants disability out of it.
Was he in Vietnam during that era?
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with him. Never has been.
Well, right now, I don't think there's a real big problem on getting on any kind of disability. So
Disability last week hit a record high.
I think basically if you got anything, you can just claim it or whatever you think. And
we're becoming a nation of takers rather than a nation of makers.
You know, that's the pits.
You're right.
All right, Red, thanks. The California massacre. Hollywood director's son murders 6 before killing himself. Hold on, we got another caller. I'm going to go ahead and take this call. We've missed a few calls. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Good morning, Steve. John and Franklin. How you doing?
Hey, good morning.
My father was a World War II veteran. My 2 uncles was also, and I was drafted to go to Vietnam, but I had a motorcycle wreck kept me out. And I just like to comment on this VA hospital scandal stuff. Did you just hear about last night that they was 30 veterans laying in the L.A. morgue and laid there for 18 months?
No.
Yeah, it was on the news last night. They was, I think it was 30, and they laid there for 18 months. And I don't know what that's about, but something's got to be done about this. So, cause it's beginning, everything's starting to break loose now. I think coming out of the woodworks about all this.
Well, it's going to continue to grow, this scandal.
It's going to continue to grow until something's actually done about it.
The big thing for people to realize is this is government-run single-payer health care. This is what it'll look like. This is what we'll all have if they continue down the road they're going.
It's going to affect everybody that's on insurance, right?
Well, my point is this is what government-run health care looks like. The VA hospital system is what government-run health care looks like. By the way, the VA is actually the most unionized part of the federal government. I think it's over 80 to 90% of their guys are union. You can't fire them. Last week, the Republican Senate put forward a bill to allow the VA, allow the government to fire these people that have screwed up. And the Democrats shut it down. Bernie Sanders, interesting enough, actually went on the floor of the Senate and said, we can't pass this because we haven't had any hearings on it and we haven't had time to read it. Now, that's the same Bernie Sanders that voted Obamacare in without any hearings or any reading. And by the way, you know how long the bill was to allow the VA to fire the bad guys? 3.5 pages long. So 3.5 pages couldn't be read and voted on.
Well, I appreciate you guys.
Thank you. 4 pleaded guilty to a $2 million Georgia prisoner IRS scam. The IRS, what are they in charge of, John?
Everything now. They're in charge of your health care. They hired thousands of new agents to enforce the. By the way, that's actually starting to crack down. They are now issuing new rules that are going to penalize companies who dump people off of their health care into the exchanges. Oh, by the way, the White House has also stopped reporting any of the numbers of enrollment on the health care exchanges. Purposely, they've announced we're not going to announce any more numbers. So it might go up, they might get better numbers, but it could also go down. They're not going to tell us. The most transparent administration in the history of the world is not going to tell us any more about enrollment numbers.
Wonder why they wouldn't tell us, Franklin.
Well, I'm not sure what John's talking about. The enrollment period is closed right now, so I'm not sure what he means.
That was their actual excuse. They said, hey, the enrollment period's closed, so it doesn't matter. But guess what, Franklin? Anybody that has a life-changing event under the law can enter. People can also drop out. They have announced that they will no longer give any updates on what the enrollment numbers are doing.
Getting back to this IRS, I'm reading this article just briefly, and it's going through. It says in prisons overall, there's a big problem with IRS scams. They get information from each other, and they utilize this stuff to file income tax claims and get extra money.
Don't
now,
you
these
think
are people in prison. My Lord, folks, what do we got to do to clean some of this crap up? I mean, how in the world could that happen?
Because it's not their money. The IRS doesn't care.
I mean,
as long as they protect their job.
You know, if we're going to have an investigation, why don't we just do a fraud investigation in IRS?
You mean like the one we've done on Medicare fraud?
The one we've done on any kind of investigation we've had is all it is an investigation.
Did you know that
nothing comes out of the investigation?
Did you know that
investigation investigate the investigation?
Did you know that this particular Justice Department has indicted over 900 people for Medicare fraud, totaling over $2.2 billion in the last 3 years?
900 people?
900 doctors.
Here's the lesson to take away. The bigger you let government get, the more fraud, the more misuse, the more mismanagement you'll get. The smaller we could keep government, the better we'll all be.
How about this new deal? China just signed a 30-year deal for Russian natural gas.
Of course. Mm-hmm. Obama didn't want us to be a player on the world stage. We're not.
Mr. Putin is making his name pretty well known right now, isn't he?
Except that most of the commentators who saw that deal said that it was very favorable to China and it was a sign of Russian weakness that they had to engage in the deal on those
Franklin,
terms.
I hate to break it to you, but I don't care whether we're being beat by the Russians or the Chinese. I don't want to be beat by either one of them.
I didn't say anything about being beat by them. I said the deal they made was a sign that the economic problems Russia is
when
experiencing
you withdraw from
forced
the
them
world
into a bad
stage.
deal.
It's a $400 billion deal, giving a boost to the democracy.
Over 30 years.
Isolated. Well, he's expanding Moscow's ties with Asia.
Well, right now,
what are we doing?
Natural gas production is actually having to slow back now because we don't have pipeline space to move it, and that's because of the Keystone that this president for 4 years
also
now.
Because we've increased our natural gas capacity
right.
about 500% in the last 7 years.
You're right, Franklin. But if we had more, the point is we are now in a bottleneck created by a lack of pipelines, and this president has shut the pipeline process down because he's paying off his environmental wacko supporters.
His environmental supporters have largely backed the natural gas movement.
They haven't backed the pipelines.
And
We're
talking about a different set of pipelines, John.
Franklin, you need the pipelines to move the product. Well, I'm sorry, Franklin. Apparently you know more than the natural gas industry.
This is a perfect example, John. When the president created circumstances where pipelines could expand rapidly over the course of the first part of his administration, that's a good thing. And now you're complaining because he didn't do it fast enough for you.
No, I'm saying
instead of giving him credit for what he did right, which
years.
is a perfect illustration
Franklin,
of the insane
the
hatred
natural gas
you guys spout
expansion
out.
happened
When he
on
does
private
what you want
land.
him to do,
Franklin,
you criticize him
this
for it.
is such a disingenuous
when he
argument.
does what Republicans want,
Franklin,
it suddenly is a bad
anything.
idea.
Now, we
on
told you
federal
months
lands,
ago
on
that the
federal
natural
lands,
gas.
Bad idea as soon as he does something a Republican
Franklin,
advocated.
natural gas production, oil
That's
production
why
on federal
people wonder
land
what
is
your motivations
down
are.
because this guy won't authorize the drilling. All of that success that he's claiming is because private land and state land increased, not federal land.
Not to mention all those subsidies.
Private land and state land, not federal.
All those regulations.
All the
that
land
made it
under his
favorable for
control, he shut down. And then he wanted to take
Every
credit
time
for
this
what everyone else
president
does.
something that previously Republicans advocated,
He
it
didn't
becomes
do
the
that,
end
though.
of the free world.
You're not being honest. He didn't do that.
Totally
It
disingenuous.
happened, but he didn't do it. He
Totally
had nothing. It
disingenuous
happened in
and
spite of
hypocritical.
him.
Let me throw
In
that in,
spite
too.
of him. It happened in spite of Obama.
Let's have another investigation to investigate the investigation.
By the way, Franklin, why isn't he taking his 5% pay cut that he promised he'd take during the
I don't
sequester?
know.
Why
I don't know
isn't
anything
he's
about that.
refusing to even verify that he didn't take his. He made a speech. You said earlier that he looked the public in the eye. Looked the public in the eye and said, "I'm going to take a 5% cut." Guess what? He didn't.
He had never given them the money.
Hadn't given anything. The man. You want to know why there's no confidence in the man? Because he can't tell the truth if his life depended on it.
We're going to have another investigation into the investigation to investigate the investigation.
But we can't comment on it until all the investigations are over.
Hey, I want to welcome in the studio real quick before we go, Mr. Adam Lowe. Come on down.
This has been rather entertaining. I mean, it's much more impressive live than on the radio. Franklin turns a particular shade of red that's rather impressive. John stays that shade. He doesn't actually turn.
Well, I will say one thing. These guys get wound up, but when it's all over with, they may talk about it a little more, but they move on with their lives and their
You've not seen
friends.
us wrestling out there in the parking lot.
No, I did get the all-call for backup when we got into the Benghazi thing, but that was...
Now, Adam, you're heavily involved in education and so forth. Now, I noticed that the school lunch programs, what do you think about the school lunch programs real quick? Oh, no, wait a minute. Let's go back to our original question. What do you think about the Valley Victorian in Cleveland High School?
I think the research is clear that the U.S. has the best mediocrity in the world. We suffer when it comes to measuring our excellent students against other developed countries, but our average student's the best.
Should Cleveland High have a valedictorian?
I think so. I don't think there's anything wrong with a valedictorian. I was one of those. I graduated from a really, really large high school, but
did they have a valedictorian?
They did, and I was far behind them. But
so would I.
But it didn't. It motivated me to be within a certain percentile of that individual. But I just don't see the embedded arguments for why you wouldn't have a valedictorian.
Because we're against competition. This culture is against competition, even though you have to compete in life.
Well, yeah, and earlier I know that y'all were talking about standards and things along those lines, and I think we all agree in this room, and this is kind of a question more than anything. The goal of education, everybody wants Tennessee to perform better in education, correct?
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And with we're implementing new standards, but the fact is, after 30 years, all of the data shows us that tinkering with standards doesn't improve academic performance. But I'll bring in that nice little journal article I wrote for Franklin on socio-political leveraging on education reform.
All right, now then, we're going to wind it up for today, but one of the things we've got to do is get the valedictorian back at Cleveland High School. I think that ought to be our mission this summer. What do you think, guys?
I'm for it.
You for it,
I
Frank?
think there'll be a groundswell for that eventually.
All right,
I think
let's
Franklin
see how much
was the
support
valedictorian, weren't you, Franklin?
Hey, if you want a valedictorian system back at Cleveland High School, just like Bradley High School has,
And Walker Valley.
please let
And
us
by the
know.
way, if you're opposed to the school system paying for breakfast and lunch for all students, whether even multimillionaires' children, come to the next Cleveland City School Board and let them know.
All right, folks. That's all. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music on Whoop FM.
Hello, you've reached the police department's voicemail. Pay close attention as we update choices often as new